Hello everyone, my name is Amanda Fenlander and this is my applied assignment for SPE 223. So to start off with, I am going to be presenting my pre-work and evidence, mostly from the applied assignment from previously in the course. My topic is about early intervention and its effect on school and home life. And the reason I chose this topic is because my end goal with my career is I want to become a behavioral analyst. And my current profession is I am currently working in a pre-K classroom with little kiddos ages 3 to 5. They all mostly have some form of disability, mainly autism. And I just want to really be able to help them. And, I kind of get to see firsthand how they can interact at school versus at home. So I just find it very interesting how early intervention can play a part in both aspects. Um, and the aspect of inclusion I'm going to be focusing on is children with disabilities in school and at home. So first I'm going to be talking about my interview with Kim V. You can see there are two pictures of her and her son Mark at the bottom right. And so her son Mark, he was diagnosed with autism from a very early age. And Kim kind of talks about it a little bit in the clips I will be presenting soon. But mostly of what I was told was that he moved into a home from a very young age, but I didn't really know much else besides that. Um, but Kim pretty much within this interview told me more about the reality of the situation that she went through. So the first part I really want to show is Kim explaining her experience with early intervention. And just she tells me a fun little story, which I felt would be nice to include. So I'm going to first start off with that.
Hey, would you say for you at least personally, like going through the early intervention and seeing Mark going through this process, was it easy for you or?
I was elated because someone finally listened to me. I felt like I had no voice, and finally someone listened to me, and they were helping him. That we taught him a few sign language things so he wouldn't get so frustrated.
Yeah.
Because all he was doing was getting frustrated.
Yeah, I'm
and
sure.
then he would bite us.
Yeah.
Sometimes himself, bang his head. But when I got involved with the early intervention, those people, I love those people. They were really good. It's way different now. All you do is you give a call and they come to your house now. Back then I drove it, 40 minutes to get there.
And I'm sure that car ride was hard in itself.
It was hard because it was in the morning and I didn't want him to fall asleep on the way home, because even if he fell asleep for 30 seconds, he wouldn't take a nap.
Yeah.
And I really needed that time for myself.
Oh, yeah.
I needed him to take a nap. So I
just kind of tap him like, stay awake.
Hey Mark, hey Mark. I grab his feet and everything.
Yeah.
And he, thank God, he he took a nap when I got home.
Good. So since starting the early intervention, I think you kind of talked about it a little bit when you were telling me the story, but I just want to reiterate it and maybe go into further detail. Did you know any form of change within Mark and his relationship with his siblings since starting early intervention?
Just Scott. He had a different relationship with Scott. We were lucky enough to live down the block from some really good kids. My sister lived 6 houses down, and her boys were the same age as my boys. And another, Mike and Jimmy.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. And so they would come over, and Mark used to go someplace else in the house, but he started sitting with them as they played video games. So he would not talk to anybody, but he would sit there and kind of watch what was going on at the TV.
Yeah.
And he that was the difference. He did.
That's good.
Yeah, it was nice.
Do you think that if you didn't have early intervention, that things would be different today?
Yes, I think he was so frustrated at that point. I know his aggression would have been much worse. He had aggression, but I would tell, I'd use some signs,
Yeah.
wait and
Waiting,
more.
all done, more. Yeah, but very familiar.
All that.
Yeah.
I used all that and a couple others, and that helped him, and
Yeah.
I was very thankful for the early intervention. We even we had two we had two christenings at the same day, and I was like, well, I'm not going.
Yeah.
And I was crying at
Yeah.
early intervention because my husband said no, we're going, and one of his teachers said, I'll watch Mark.
Aww.
And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, just bring him over. I'll keep an eye on him. And she's like, he was so good.
Aww.
It was so funny. I was like, are you kidding me?
You're like, whose kid is that?
And she said we were on the hammock and we were swinging and he fell
Aw.
asleep in my arms.
Aww,
She
so
said, I
sweet.
really loved having him. And I was like,
Oh, that's really sweet. So,
All right. So the main reason that I kind of put that longer clip in is just to reiterate the fact that early intervention is such a beneficial thing for children who have disabilities because, as Kim mentioned, he was someone who had very bad aggressions, which I will kind of get into with this next clip. But just having those slight noticeable changes of Mark being able to just sit there and watch his older brother Scott's friends play video games, that is such a big and important improvement that may seem so small to like people on the outside, but like just little things like that are so incredibly important. And when I get into this next clip from the interview, I really want you to just think about what Kim is saying and kind of think about how early intervention ultimately could help with behaviors like what Kim and Mark went through. So I'm going to play that now.
at what age? Because he went to a home, right?
yes.
At what age was that?
He was 10 years old.
And how did you know it was sort of time that he needed something more than what you could provide?
He was on, they were trying to get him on a whole bunch of different medications, and he was really becoming very aggressive. He choked me for no reason. I just passed him by, and he put his hands around my neck, and I had two small ones. Joey was only 2, and his para, actually, I watched her son, and he was 1, so they were 1 and 2, and I was so afraid they were going to get hurt. And I ended up having to go to the hospital, and they thought I was a beaten woman.
Yeah.
I said, no, a 10-year-old did this to me. It's my son. He has autism. And I had to call the police a lot because I needed backup because I was by myself.
Yeah.
So that's when we knew that I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
He's getting too dangerous.
Okay.
So I researched schools, and this one, even though it was so far away, it was about 2 hours to get to. He went there. He went to school, and they had dorms, and he stayed in the dorms with the other children.
Okay. And since when he moved, was there a very considerable shift in the house?
Yes.
Yeah.
There really was. More friends came over, like Valerie's friends. They would come over, and everybody seemed at peace, and I felt very guilty about feeling that peace. And so, but everybody, they missed Mark, but they didn't miss what Mark did. And we would still go every other weekend to see Mark, take him out. We didn't write him off. We saw him every other weekend, and we took him out to places where he liked to go, and that he wouldn't be a nuisance to anybody else trying to have a good time. So that's what we did. And I actually 2 months or so after he was put in the death row, I actually had a nervous breakdown, and I was in the hospital for 17 days because I couldn't take the guilt that I was feeling.
Yeah.
So it helped, but I still felt the guilt.
Yeah,
I still
I'm
felt like,
sure.
why can't I take care of my son? This isn't right. So he doesn't talk. What if he's hurt? What if so it was a very hard transition for me.
I'm sure.
But Mark had this thing. If we were driving by a McDonald's or a Burger King, he had very few words, but burger was his favorite. And if I passed it, he would have fit.
Yeah.
So every time I passed the Burger King, I had to go in and get him something. So the first time I passed the Burger King when he wasn't in the car, I got nervous because I passed it, and I'm like, oh no, I passed it. He's gonna scream, and that was a relief.
Yeah.
I saved money, but yeah, that was it was a relief, and that's when the guilt.
Yeah.
No, the guilt was really bad.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not easy because, it's at the end of the day, it's your child. And, you want to do, as a parent, it's natural for you to want to do what's best for them, to do everything in your power to help them. So I can't possibly imagine what being in that situation
I
is
felt I wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And it was difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, with this clip in particular, I felt it was very important to show because not only does it, discuss the behaviors that Mark was going through, guaranteed he, had more extreme behaviors than a lot of children, but they do happen. But the reason I felt this part was so important was because Kim really went into detail how it affected her mentally and her family. She really, you can kind of feel like the heartbreak behind her words. And obviously, like I mentioned in the interview, it's her child, and having to go through something like this, I can't even imagine what it must be like. And, we often think about, oh my gosh, like, I can't imagine what it's like to have a child like Mark and having to go through it. And, people tend to focus on the aspect of Mark, he has autism, he acts in this way. But then on the other side, you think about the family that's being affected, how everything is kind of not revolved around him, but is based off of his actions and his mood. And like him mentioned, they ended up having more friends over when, he eventually left the home and everything kind of felt a little bit more relaxed. However, Kim was still dealing with some mental, issues and just having to go through it. So with her, it was really great getting to know her story more. And, she's a great mother to all of her children. And, I just felt like after this interview too, like I got so much closer to her. So I'm really grateful to have been able to interview her and get to know her story. The next interview I'm going to be talking about is my interview with the teacher that I currently work with. Now, I honestly don't really talk to her like too much, so I didn't really have a lot of background information. I knew she worked in early intervention. She's been a teacher for quite a while, but as she mentions in the interview, she's been a teacher for almost 30 years, and I mostly wanted to get her perspective on everything because since she did deal in early intervention, I wanted to see kind of what she thought of the whole experience, how beneficial it was to children. And I'll kind of piggyback off of what she says in the interview, so I'll let that play now. All right, we're good. Okay, so the first question I have is just how long have you been teaching for?
24, almost 30 years.
Okay.
About 29.
All right.
A long time.
And you said you earlier you had experience in early intervention,
Yes,
right?
I did.
So how was your overall experience with it?
It was good if you had parents that followed along.
Okay, because that was one of my questions. Like, what was the biggest obstacle?
Yeah,
with
the parents. Yeah, because early intervention set up differently than this. So they're it's supposed to be like a teaching model. So like you're supposed to go in and train them, or parent training model.
Okay.
So you're supposed to train them on things to do, and half the time they didn't really want to be involved. Yeah.
Okay.
That was like their time.
All right, gotcha.
Yeah.
But overall, would you say that early intervention had a positive impact on the kids, like before they come in here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you know the difference between the kids that we have that didn't have early intervention versus the ones that did. Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
And like, what kind of things do you notice, like in your years of teaching, has been like the difference between someone who has had early intervention versus someone who hasn't?
Just their overall cooperation to do things. Like with these kids on the spectrum, kids who are a little bit more, they give you more eye contact. They're a little bit more engaged, and not just so self-directed. But you do have that with kids who are
it's kind of expected.
Like, you just know different. Like the kids that can sit in the chair, the kids that don't have any kind of like, they're very self-directed.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
Perfect. All right. I think that was it then. Perfect.
So yeah, that was kind of a quick interview because we did this like at the very end of the day when everyone was leaving. But she kind of mentioned that I have experience with these kids, and it's true. Sorry, because from my perspective, obviously I don't really interact with the parents. I interact with the kids, but I think it was important to get her perspective because one thing I kind of assumed was that a lot of it is based off of the parents and the parents' willingness to get early intervention, because a lot of these kids that come in, their parents want us to, in a sense, fix them. And a lot of these kids, there's no fixing them. They are who they are, and that's the reality of it. And with those parents, a lot of times they don't get early intervention, or if they do, it's very minimal. And I've heard stories where they kind of fight the professionals on it. And so I'm not going to use any actual names because I don't have permission, but I will be using random initials. So we have this boy, S, and he was someone who had early intervention. And me and the teacher kind of talked about this afterwards, and you can tell, like, he would, as she mentioned, sit in his chair. He was full verbal. He could use a spoon. He could use a fork. He could tell us what he wants. He knew yes and no. Obviously, yes, he still had behaviors because he's autistic. But when you compare him to someone like this boy, L, he came in, no early intervention, could not sit in his seat for more than 2 minutes. He would just be all over the place, running around in circles, not listening, not responsive. And from my experience, you can kind of tell, as the teacher mentioned. So I just thought this was pretty important, just to get a different perspective, someone from a more professional perspective, rather than Kim. So for my course materials, I used the article Introduction to the Special Issue, Family Support of Persons with Disabilities Across the Life course. And the reason I brought this article into this presentation was mostly because of and excuse my pronunciation, I've been practicing but I can never say it, Bronfenbrenner, in his ecological theory, sorry. And the reason I find this so important is because this really shows that it takes a village. It starts with the individual, it goes to the family, and then the community around them, and then it goes to more of the, laws and, as it says, state and national politics, or policy, sorry. But overall, the family can only do so much, and I think that's so important when it comes to early intervention, because that helps bring in that sense of community to the family and to help the person with the disability. So in my eyes, I think Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory is really important. And I think that this article does such a great job of talking and discussing about why having that sense of community is so important for those with disabilities. And then the next article that I used was Los Angeles Schools Struggle to Integrate Special Education Students. And I thought this was really important because a lot of students, about only 85% of students, need 100% of their special services. So this includes occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy. And to me, that's so aggravating and upsetting because, a lot of these kids, and especially from my personal experience, and I also attached a clip of Kim talking about it because I feel like it's very important. But a lot of these kids really need those services. And I've noticed, especially in my district, a lot of these kids, they either don't get their 3 days, 4 days a week, or if they do, their time is very cut short. And I think that just any time that these kids can get, they should have that amount of time to get those services. Sorry, my throat's dry. But here's Kim talking about her experience with the school system and how Mark was with their special services.
Sweet. So, gearing more towards school now. When Mark started school, did you encounter any issues? This could be regarding getting like an IEP or a 504.
His IEP, I felt they were trying to give me the least amount of services, and it was very hard to sit with the team because of course they didn't. And I was so surprised after how early intervention couldn't help but give me more hours. Hey, this one didn't come in. Do you want Mark to come in? It was nothing but helpful, and I assumed it would be that way in the school district. And he was in district, and it was. I had a spy. his para was we got friendly, and she would tell me like she's not picking him up to take him to speech. She missed speech again. So I would have to, like not tell them where I found out.
Yeah.
But I would tell them what I was always calling a special meeting with the IEP because they really did not want to give him his services, and they thought it was best that he's with his peers. And one time I found out Mark was 10. He was a little kid. He wasn't a big kid, and he was put with, even though he's 10 years old, they put him with the first graders. So I was like, and I found out by an invitation for a birthday party for, they had the class list, and Mark was on the class list. And I said, how does your son know my son? She said, oh, he's in his class. I'm like, well, how old is your son? And she's like 6. And I'm like, my son's 10.
Yeah.
And she said, oh. And I told her a little about what was going on. And then I had to throw, I got so mad.
Yeah,
I said, you said that you want to keep him with his peers, but his peers are 10, not 6.
Yeah.
And that's when I finally started fighting. And I had to get a lawyer, and we had to sue the school district so he can go to a special school geared for him.
Yeah.
I mean, his IEP said he'll receive speech 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And sometimes he didn't get it at all.
So, as you can see, this has been a problem for quite a few years now, and it doesn't seem like it's getting really any better. Kim was very frustrated that her child was alluded to so much time and he wasn't getting it. He wasn't getting the necessary help he needed, while early intervention was so eager to give them all these hours because they wanted to help Mark. So I just felt that this article was just really important to my project. So for my research, the first journal I found was a parent-sibling dyadic interview to explore how an individual with autism spectrum disorder can impact family dynamics. So this article really went into great detail about what autism spectrum disorder is and how the COVID-19 pandemic really impacted parents with children who have those disabilities. And it really went over how exhausting, the parents were, the emotional impact on the parents, and you got to think that a lot of times these kids were just rambunctious, to say the least. And, with children, with parents who have multiple children who may or may not be also on the autism spectrum disorder, it's a lot. And I tend to forget about the families, and it's hard to, in my position at least, it's very hard to not judge a family, and I think that's a problem that I have been currently working on is, a kid might come in and their hair might be a little disheveled, and I'm like, my first instinct is to say, why you can't brush your child's hair, and it's, reality, there's so much more to the parents and the family dynamic. So I think this journal is really important with that discussion. And the second journal I found was the value of early intervention for children with autism. And this really opened my eyes to the different forms of early intervention that there is. And it also gave some of the different red flags to look out for. So, like, if you call their name and they are not responsive, that's like one of the red flags you could look out for. But with early intervention going into this project, I really only thought of behavioral analyst. I didn't really think about there was other things. I knew that, kids were getting outside speech or like outside eating therapies and just stuff like that, but I never really considered that to be early intervention when it is. So this is new learning. So the first evidence that, or the first new learning I'm going to be talking about is inclusion. And my take on this is that inclusion isn't always a good thing when it comes to integration within a classroom. And the reason I feel this is important is because we want to bring awareness to disabilities. It's extremely, extremely important for other children to know, hey, this child might not be the same as me, and that's okay. It's good to bring awareness. But I don't always think that it is necessary, especially if the child with the disability is not ready or capable of being in that classroom that is a general education classroom. So, the first thing I'm going to discuss is the interview I had with Kim, and she kind of brings up a good point. So I'm going to play that for you real quick.
And recently, there's been the discussion of integration into classrooms where we take our kids and bring them into the general education classroom. So as someone who has gone through this experience with Mark and has had personal experience with him going into a school, how do you feel about the idea of integrated classrooms, even if it's just for, like, for example, we're going in for 45 minutes, or how would you feel about, one day just going in for like an hour? What's your opinion?
Well, Mark did go for circle time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was about a half hour, and I didn't mind that because it gave the kids, the other children, like, don't be afraid. He's happy. He's smiling. Mark's not going to hurt you. But anything longer than that, I don't agree with. I absolutely, it distracts the other children, and it makes them stand out more.
Yeah.
During circle time, Mark's happy. He's singing. Well, his mom, he can't.
Yeah.
Not singing, but he knows the songs.
Yeah.
But to put him in a class, he's up and down from his chair, and he just disturbs the whole class.
Okay.
So I don't agree with it.
Okay.
I mean, some of your kids probably can handle it.
Yeah, it would depend on the kid.
Yeah.
The thing is, this is very a new discussion, at least that I'm being introduced to. I'm sure it's been around. Personally, in my opinion, we do have children. I'm not going to say any names, but I'll use initials. Like, we have this one boy, S, who is on the spectrum, but he's very, like, on the lower end.
Okay.
So he plays with the other kids. He can interact. He has full speech. Obviously, yes, he's autistic, but he has been going in the mornings to an integrated classroom, and he's thriving in it.
Oh.
However, we have kids who are on the very opposite end, and as example, my boy M, if someone comes close to him and he's very OCD, so when playing with trucks, he'll line them up. But he won't necessarily play with them, he just, lines them up. And if another child was to come over and play with the toy, he would go to bite them. So I feel like, in a sense, it's good to have some form of integration to get them more socialized and to get the other gen ed kids more aware.
Right.
However, in my opinion, I think it solely based on the child and their own needs.
I think I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Because going into a gen ed classroom, especially at an early age, there's just so much going on, and these kids get overstimulated so quick as it is. So, in my opinion, to just throw them into a classroom where there's less, or I guess there's more freedom because there's less paras. There's only one teacher, usually one para. It can be, I think it can be a lot for some kids, but I just want to get your opinion on it as someone who has gone through it. And then.
So I think I pretty much explained very well my opinion on it. And, from Kim's point of view, too, I feel that she sort of agreed with me. It depends mostly on the child and the child's needs. I'm also going to show a video of a 17-year-old boy named Leo who has Down syndrome, and he is in an integrated classroom. And within this video, we kind of get two different perspectives. We get the perspective of the teacher whose classroom he is in, and then another woman discussing how, when you go into these classrooms, you want them to be socialized. They're not going into a special world, they're going into everybody's world. So let me get that clip going.
How often is Leo doing the same things as the other students in class?
Well, for it to be meaningful for Leo at the level that he's at, the work has to be modified. And what sound does the letter F make?
F.
What sound?
What are the reasons that unions became necessary?
It's a good buzzword, gen ed. Put the kids in gen ed, gen ed, gen ed. I don't know if it's for everybody.
Most of the time, Leo is in Ross Kramer's class, together with other students with intellectual disabilities.
And what could happen to Luke if he sleeps on the job? What do you think, Leo? Is his boss gonna like that?
No.
No. I don't myself usually send kids to general education unless it's part of the meeting and the parents insist on that happening.
Why?
Would I have sent? Because I don't think they could access the curriculum as well.
This one, Leo.
A lot of the work's being spoon-fed and done to them. What are they retaining?
So it's going to go
What are they getting from that?
The FTC was established to...
Others see it differently.
That young man, when he leaves school, he's not going to a special education job. He's not going to a special education movie theater. And so it's important for our students to be in that community of individuals that they're going to spend the rest of their life with when they leave us.
All right, so that is the clip that I wanted to present. Oops, let me go back. So with this topic, obviously there are different point of views of it, which is totally fine. So I guess one of the questions I would like to ask everyone here and my peers is, what is your opinion on this? Do you think integration within the classroom depends on the child? Do you think it should be necessary? Or do you just don't think it's really, a big deal? So let me know. I can't wait to read your responses. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is equity. And my main topic for this is that a lot of siblings of individuals who have disabilities, they often have to adhere to the conditions of that individual. So from one of the articles I mentioned previously, it talks about how siblings are often embarrassed or stressed when it comes to their siblings' behaviors. And a lot of the time they are also required to help out with their sibling. This could be even if they're older, if they're younger. And I also put in an example of Mark and Kim. And she really just talks about how, sometimes when they go out, they have to leave places early because of Mark. But I'm just gonna let the clip play.
They kind of dealt with Mark. They went through a lot with Mark when we were out and stuff. We would be at Six Flags and he would have a meltdown and be like, we gotta go, and none of the kids cried. Yeah. None said, that's not fair. They were very understanding.
Good.
It was a quick little clip, but I think it just reiterates the fact that, if Mark was having a moment, at Six Flags, because of that, the children had to leave. And I think that kind of just plays into our course because it discusses how family is so important again. And when it comes to children with autism, it takes a village. It can't just be the parents. Siblings sometimes have to help out. And it really takes a good family dynamic to help care for an individual with autism. So the last thing I'm going to be talking about with new learning is access. And this kind of goes back to a previous slide where I discussed how I wasn't really fully aware of the different types of early intervention that is there. So for my evidence, I have all the different types of early intervention kind of listed out and described. Um, so the first one is developmental pragmatic approaches, and that kind of just helps children with speech impediments if they have communication delays. And it usually involves when parents are very over talkative to kind of help fill the blank gaps. Um, that could just be an example of like, let's see, what do I have near me? I have Mickey. I have a black Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse is black. What do I have? Mickey Mouse. So it's just kind of something like that where the parents really overtalk. And we kind of do that too at my job, and I didn't even really think about that. A kid could be playing with a red carpet, like, oh, like you're playing with a red car goes vroom vroom. I love how you're playing with the red car. The car is red car goes vroom vroom. So it's just kind of stuff like that where you kind of get annoyed with yourself, like hearing yourself talk, but it really helps. The second thing is the applied behavior analysis. And this kind of, I wrote think Pavlov's dog because that's really what it is when you reinforce a desired behavior. So if, let's say, an example that I have in my personal life that I've dealt with is we had this boy D, and when he would get very upset, his go-to was to bang his head on the floor. And so from there, our behavioral analyst came in and said, you know what we'll do is instead of doing that, we'll give him his blanket, and we'll kind of reward that good behavior. It's like, you didn't bang your head on the floor. Good job. Here is your blanket, like that kind of thing. So, you're kind of conditioning them to want the desired outcome so they get that, positive reinforcement. And then the last thing is the comprehensive environmental systems, which helps provide an area or an environment with like clear and precise information about what is expected from that individual. I have in the example, think of workstation. Like when we go over to the workstation, they know we're going to do work. If we go to the play area, they know they're going to be able to play with the different types of toys, or they can go to the common corner where they can relax. There's those set expectations for the environment, for that specific environment. And the connection really is that just by offering different types of early intervention, it gives children the opportunity to thrive within a social environment. And then by working on behaviors and communication skills, early, it helps them in the long run. We like to say the earlier you can like nick it in the butt, you'll be good. It'll help them so much in the long end. My continued inquiry. So, what I want to really get to know is why are some families so hesitant to get their children early intervention? A lot of times we tend to notice that certain races are kind of against it more. And some people have certain beliefs, but I like to wonder if there is more to it. So what I can do is, ask individuals that are more experienced than me what they believe. I can also do my own research into different articles and see what kind of opinions are even about early intervention. A lot of the research I did was putting intervention in a positive light, where I wonder if there are articles that kind of paint it in a more negative light. So that's kind of what I would like to know. So another question for my peers, because I know I already asked one, is do you think early intervention plays a bigger role when it comes to a child's school life or home life? Or do you think they play an equal role? For me, after all this research, I really think that it kind of plays an equal role. I feel like they both affect one another, but I would like to know what you guys think. Here are all of my references for everything that I was using for both the videos and the articles. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching.